Here is the attendance link for everyone. Make sure that you Happy New Year and welcome to the KPBSD Mentor Training for January. If you have not Welcome to the KPBSD Mentor Training. If you haven't filled out the sign-in sheet, please go back to your email and make sure that you get signed in for attendance for this training. Okay, the first thing I want to talk to, oh, there she is. Hey, Robin.
Hi.
All right, let's get going. It's just you. That's okay. I forgot to record. So I'm glad you came because at least I'll have somebody that I'm talking to while I record this.
Okay, I was just gonna say if it's just me, I'll just listen to the recording.
I forgot to record.
Do a whole thing.
Yeah, we'll just go because I forgot to record.
Okay. And just fair warning, I do have my children in my classroom.
No worries.
It can be a little crazy in here, so
no worries.
Okay.
All right, so I'm just going to start for the recording.
Okay.
Happy New Year. Welcome to the January Mentor Training. I am dropping the attendance link into the chat currently. Make sure you grab that link and you get yourself signed in for today's session.
Okay. Let me open this back up. Oh no, hold on. Now I can't find my chat. Oh, there it goes. Okay, just
there it is.
Show up.
All right, the link is sitting in the chat so you can get signed in for the day or for the session.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So the first thing I want to talk about is the coaching cycle. You're probably already familiar with this cycle, but I wanted to talk to you about how this cycle pertains to mentoring or instructional coaching. In a mentoring world, mentoring ends. Mentoring is all about supporting a new teacher in their new role, helping them build their practice, build their pedagogy, and typically just learning how to be a teacher. Instructional coaching, on the other hand, never ends and can occur with any teacher at any point in their career. Instructional coaching is centered around a goal and more appropriately, a learning goal for the student. So currently in our second year mentors, the hope is that all of our mentors working with their first year teacher roll over into that second year. And if the mentors decide to roll over with the second year, then I'll ask them to do a coaching cycle 4 times a year, 1 each quarter. So a coaching cycle basically is a pre-conference where in the pre-conference, the coach vets out what the teacher wants to shine the spotlight on. So, so it could be engagement. It could be management. So the pre-conference is all about what do I want to shine the spotlight on and what data am I going to collect to reflect that spotlight that we're shining. So the pre-conference is all about what's the mentor going to be looking at and what data is going to be taken. And then the classroom visit is all about, again, being a witness to the good. You're going to document everything that you see going well in the classroom and then take the data that you've already agreed upon. And then the post-conference is looking at the data reflecting on that data and talking about the instructional shifts that could happen as a result of that data. So again, that coaching cycle is the pre-conference. What am I going to shine the spotlight on? What data am I going to take? The visit is all about being a witness to the good and taking the data during the visit, and then the post-conference is the debrief. What does the data say? What reflections can be made from that data, and what instructional shifts could happen? So that's the coaching cycle. And I kind of wanted to preview that for all the first year teachers and start priming the pumps for next year.
Gotcha.
So here's the January calendar. Next week is the first week of the mentoring. When we start mentoring and getting back to the meetings, January 15th and then January 22nd. So let's dig down into what each of these weeks are going to look like. First, before we do that, I kind of wanted to do a mentor recalibration. I know that December is so wonky and and I'm saying that loosely. December is wonky. So, you know, it's okay if mentors fell off the wagon. It's okay if you didn't have a chance to meet, but and just like you're doing with your classrooms, you're recalibrating, you're kind of doing that reset. I wanted to do that with you guys as well. And here's are the expectations for mentors is to build a professional relationship. You already did that. Meet with your mentee 1 hour a week, complete the weekly Foursquare. Most of the mentors are doing a really good job on that. Just a reminder that it is important to fill out those weekly Foursquares, participate in the training, and implement the topics and discussions, and read the first days of school. So it's just a mentor recalibration, and I just kind of wanted to reset the expectations. Okay, let's dig down deep into what the month is going to look like. For that week of January 9th, it's all about talking about how are we going to reset or redo things this year. It's 2 weeks away is a long time. For high school mentees, they might even be starting a new semester with different groups of students. For elementary, you're coming back after a period of time. So this week's conversation should be all about getting back into the swing of school and reflecting on how things can improve or change from last semester. It's a good time to reset those procedures, reteach how you want the days to go with kids. Mentees and mentors shouldn't be surprised if the students forgot everything. They usually do. So it's a good time to reteach your procedures and reset for the second semester. Also, during the week of January 8th, I think it would be a good idea to introduce your mentees to this website. It's a fabulous website. It has all kinds of interventions, supports, resources, and they're framed into tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 supports. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click into the website, and I'm going to show you how it works. And then I'm going to give you about 5 minutes just to explore the site. So this is what the home page looks like. And it's a whole host of all different behaviors you might see in a classroom. So let's say your mentee has a student who is being disrespectful. Let's just say, if you click into any one of these buttons, it'll give you a list of some of the behaviors that you might see. And then you can say yes, and it's going to give you a bunch of interventions. If you say no, it's going to take you back to the home screen. But let's say yes, and you'll see all these different interventions that the mentee can implement with students. Now, the beauty of this website is that every single intervention has an explanation of why you should do it, when you should do it, has all kinds of and additional resources here. Also important is that they have data tracking forms, a whole host of different forms you can take. So I'm going to give you, and also take note that there's a tier 1, a tier 2, and a tier 3. So they've identified interventions that fall into that tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 structure. So let's take about 5 minutes and I'm going to let you explore this website a little bit. So let's come back together at 4:03.
Are you gonna put that link in the chat?
Oh, yes, thank you.
Okay.
I forgot. I got so busy. There's the link. Are you finding this website to have a lot of information? Okay, we'll get going again.
Got lots of some good things, but see,
Say that again. I didn't hear you.
oh, I said it gives a good place to start, I think.
Great.
But I'm such a conscious discipline person that
Gotcha.
some of the things I'm just kind of like,
Right.
but you know,
Right.
it's okay. I
Yeah.
mean, the rewards and punishment stuff and, you know, call home. Like, okay. I mean, that's not really like you know, an intervention. I mean,
Gotcha.
that's a communication method, but you know, it's
Gotcha.
okay. I mean, it's a good place to start. If you have no idea where to start, you know,
Mhm.
gotta
And I
start
think
somewhere.
there's some good data recording forms too.
Yeah.
It's a good resource to have. So,
Yeah.
so please share that information with your mentee.
Yeah.
And we'll keep going. All right. So for January 8th, it's the PBIS and just kind of getting back into the swing of school. For the week of January 16th, it would be good for you to talk with your mentee about visiting their classroom. So in January, we start moving into that third big idea in the first days of school book. The three big ideas being effective teachers have good classroom management. We spent a lot of time on classroom management. Effective teachers have positive expectations for students. We spent time on that. Now, January through May, we're really going to be honing in on that third big idea: effective teachers design lessons for mastery. And so part of that will be doing some classroom visits in your mentee's room. So what does that look like? Talk with your mentee about the logistics of visiting during a lesson and start trying to plan one for February. The hope is that you can do one in February, one in March, and one in April. It would be good to see ELA for this first time, then maybe math for March, and then maybe writing or social studies, science for April. For secondary, let your mentee choose a period that they want you to see. For secondary, it would be good to see 3 different periods because the class dynamics change, as well as the subject content. You know, it could be a different subject altogether. So secondary, it would be good to see 3 different periods of February, March, April. For elementary, it would be good to see ELA, then math, and then writing. But there's some flexibility. We're asking that you visit for a minimum of 1 hour, just one lesson. And there's lots of flexibility. Remember, there's a budget out there for mentors to be out of the classroom. You can take a half day. You'll have to take a half day because that's how our subs are structured. So you'll take that half day, and you can spend the entire time in your mentee's classroom if that works for your relationship and your mentoring partnership, or you can spend just the hour in the classroom. So there is a process, and we'll talk about that process on the next slide. But what does the visit look like? Basically, you're just going to be a fly on the wall. It's super important to not bring attention to yourself while you're doing that visit. As soon as you manage kids or you start talking to them, or helping, you think you're helping, but what you're really doing is you're taking authority away from the teacher, because very often if the kids know you, they know you in a teaching context. So it's really important to have minimal or no interactions with kids, again, just to be a fly on the wall. I know it's hard to sit on your hands, but it's just an hour. But it's good to get an idea into the strengths and areas of growth for your mentee. Because at this point, you haven't seen them in the classroom with kids. You've just been talking with them outside the classroom. So it just gives you another insight into their practice. And remember that it's super informal and really just a visit. So when I go into classrooms, and the kids start talking to me, I always revert the attention back on the teacher. If they start asking, they always want to interact with you, especially the little ones. They always want to interact with you. And I always say, okay, what are you supposed to be doing? What are the directions your teacher have? So just really, really know that it's important to not bring attention to yourself. As a teacher, you're just a visitor in the classroom. So when you go into the classroom beginning in February, let me talk a little bit about the process for the classroom visit. As you know, there's a budget for mentors to be out of the classroom, and the process is, just like everything, there's a procedure. And the procedure for the classroom visit is to reach out to me with the date of the sub. The date of the classroom visit, and then I'll do my paperwork on the end. What you need to do as a teacher and as a mentor is secure your sub through ASOP or absence management, and you want to code it as in service. It's always going to be in service. Now, as the date approaches, I'll provide a sign-in to you via the email. And what you'll want to do is you want to print off that sign-in, both you and your mentee sign that. I know that your mentee's not out of classroom, but our mentor secretary is asking that both the mentor and the mentee sign the sign-in sheet, and it's just a generic sign-in sheet. It's like any other professional development event that you attend. It's just a generic sign-in sheet. And then you return that back to me. When you do your time card, it'll always be coded as in service, and I'll give you the subcode to put into your time card. I always recommend that when you code your time card with in service, you'll put the 4 hours or the 8 hours underneath the in service column, and then in the note, it's always good to put some little note, mentee day with the mentor's name, and then the subcode, put it in there. So you set your secretary up for success. Now, I'm giving you all these instructions in the process on this slide deck, but know that I'll give them to you again in the email that I sent you with the sign-in sheet. So this isn't the only time you're going to get this information. I'll give it to you again on the email with the sign-in sheet. But the first step is to, when you land on the day, reach out to me with the date. Okay, so when you go into your classrooms, there'll be a lesson looked for form. Now, let me drop a copy of this form into the chat. Now, my years of mentoring and instructional coaching, when I go into a classroom, I always try to frame the lesson into 4 big ticket items. What I'm always looking for when I go into a classroom is I'm looking for the learning target. What do you want students to know or be able to do during this lesson? What's the engagement? What are the activities that are addressing the learning target? What checks for understanding are happening? How do you know that students are understanding? How do you know that students got the lesson or have achieved the learning target? And then that closure piece. For me, I've always found that closure piece is super important. And the reason why is the brain remembers first and last best. Closure can simply be just reinstating the learning objective or an exit ticket, or it could be a reflection. Forgetting to close a lesson is a missed opportunity to reinforce what the teacher wants the students to know be able to do. It's just an opportunity to reinforce what you want students to have learned during that lesson. So I always look for closure. I look for these 4 big ticket items: learning target, engagement, checks for understanding, and closure. So you'll have this form when you go do your classroom visit. And my style is to print it off and then hand write into it. That's just my style. I'm kind of old school that way. However, in our technology world, you can type it in on your computer as well. Either way, whatever works best for you. But So the learning target engagement checks for understanding and closure, it's going to be just a brief, just a brief description in each one of those boxes. What you're really going to spend most of your time filling in is what went well. Remember that, that the more you can cheerlead your mentee, the better it's going to be for your mentee. The positive feedback is really what they need. So you want to fill up the what went well with as many positive things you can fit in the box. Again, be your mentee's cheerleader with lots and lots of positive feedback. If you look at the feedback triangle, you know, that positive based feedback is what you want to do the most. And so that what went well box is the place to be a witness to the good and write all the things that you see going well. Now, so in that question box, my suggestion is to possibly think of one question that might drive the debrief conversation. Craft maybe 1 or 2 questions in that question box. Remember, learning-based feedback, you want to do that moderately. So you want to fill up what went well, and then maybe 1 or 2 things that might drive the debrief conversation. So that's the lesson look for's form. And here's a sample of what it could look like. So if you look at the lesson look for, you'll notice here, it's just a brief description in the learning target engagement, checks for understanding and closure, just a brief statement. The learning target is summarize the main idea. What's the engagement piece? Questioning, student turn and talk. Checks for understanding, the teacher had students do a stop and jot, and the teacher was listening in during the turn and talks. And the closure was simply the teacher reiterated the main idea for students. And you'll notice that there's lots of things that went well in this particular lesson. Clear objectives, student participation, wait time, proximity to students, coaching kids, good rapport, and the teacher attended to student misbehavior. All those things, be a witness to the good. You want to fill that box up, what went well. And then you'll notice there's just 1, maybe 2 questions. How do you feel the lesson went? Do you feel like students have a good handle on identifying the main idea? So the idea behind providing this example is that the lesson look for form isn't, it isn't, the idea behind the form is not to write an essay or scribe everything that happened in the lesson. It just gives you a frame to reference the lesson. So just a couple words in each one of the boxes. What went well is completely filled up, 1 or maybe 2 questions. Any questions on the lesson look for's? Okay, so again, like I mentioned before, for the next couple of months, we're really going to be digging down deep into effective teachers design lessons for mastery. So what I want to do is I want to drill deeper into each of the 4 big ticket items. This month, we're going to talk about learning targets. Next month, it'll be engagement, then checks for understanding, then closure. So this month, it's about learning targets. Why do you need to, why are learning targets so important? And why is it a big ticket item? Well, it's super important for there to be teacher clarity in the lesson. It's important for the teacher as well as students to know what is expected of them. That learning target is simply, what do you want students to know or be able to do? And teacher clarity has been researched by John Hattie, and it found that it has an effect size of 0.75. So if you're not familiar with John Hattie, he did this huge meta-analysis of educational research over, I think, a span of 50 years. And what he found is there's certain things that teachers do that accelerate learning. And anything that he found has a 0.4, over a 0.4 effect size, accelerate learning. And teacher clarity was one of those. And it was, I think it's number like 20 something on the list. So having a clear learning target where the teacher knows what that learning target is and the students know what that learning target is, a good way to accelerate learning. And that's what's so important about learning targets. So, my teacher style when I was in the classroom was to announce to the class, today this is what we're learning about. But that was my teaching style. Know that every teacher has their own style. What's important is that there is clarity so that everyone knows what the learning targets, both students and teachers. So when you go into the classroom and you have your lesson look for, it should be pretty clear. You should be able to figure it out pretty quickly what the learning target is. And if you can't, that could be something that you could scribe, you could craft that into a question. What was the learning target for this lesson? So that's an opportunity for you to drive that debrief conversation. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the difference between a learning target and a learning target and standards. Very often learning targets, you'll see learning targets are synonymous with standards. But the difference between a learning target and a standard is that learning targets are chunked down into what's going to be learned in that particular lesson, while standards are end of the year goals. They're end of the grade level goals. So learning targets very often look exactly like standards, but sometimes you might see them chunked down into that day's lesson. So that's really just the difference between the two. Okay. So if you are a teacher, if you're an elementary teacher and you are implementing CKLA, they've done a pretty good job of already identifying the learning targets. And it looks like what you see on the screen. They call out the primary focus of each of the lessons. So if you're teaching CKLA, they've already done that identification of the learning targets for you. And same for iReady. They've already identified the learning targets. Now, if you're not implementing CKLA or iReady or your secondary, then you're on your own for identifying your own learning targets. But CKLA and iReady have done them for you. Now, what's the difference between a learning target and an activity? So know that a learning target is, again, what you want students to know or be able to do by the end of the lesson. And activities are those things that students do to get there. So I have a fun little activity that allows you to categorize learning targets and activities. So I'm going to drop this link into the chat, and then I'll give you about 3 minutes to do the activity. It's about nine things that you're going to categorize either as a learning target or as an activity. Okay, there's the link, and let's come back together at 4:24. It's about 3 minutes to do that. Okay, here's the answers. How'd you do, Robin? Perfect, yeah. Yeah. I just thought it was a good activity to see how learning targets really are synonymous with standards very often, and some of the activities that teachers do to get to those learning targets. So there was some disagreement with summarizing the main idea could definitely fall into either the learning target category or the activity category. So that was some of the comments that I had in the last session, and that it's true. In the secondary sense, summarizing might be the activity to get to how muscles and bones work together in the body. So I just wanted to point that out.
Well, really, then the learning target should probably say, accurately summarize, or, solve the multi-step equations with, 85% accuracy or something, right?
Right.
Because then that way, if that's the target, what is it over here? Is it over here?
Right. Yeah.
So
So they just made some good points.
But yeah.
Yeah. So I might have to make some changes for next year.
People will always debate you about everything, so it doesn't matter.
So the last week of the month is the debrief for the first days of school. And really the reading was really all about how effective teachers trump everything else. Teachers have the greatest impact on kids. It's not the programs, it's not the curriculum, not the technology, not fewer students in the classroom, not personalized learning approaches, and not fads. It's the teacher. The teacher has the biggest impact on kids and trump everything else. Students with several effective teachers in a row can make really dramatic achievement gains. Students who have even 2 ineffective teachers in a row could lose significantly. So it's all about the effectiveness of teachers, and that's why the mentoring program, and that's why this program is so important, because we want to grow teachers so that students have the best opportunities to grow academically. The reading also talked about the 4 stages of teaching. The Wangs kind of put it into 4 levels of 4 stages of teaching. Fantasy, when new to profession teachers, they get to the classroom and they want to change the world, right? They think that everything's gonna go off the way they thought it was gonna go, and then they get to survive and they're like, oh, it's hard work to be a teacher. And then you start getting better, you start getting proficient. So you start mastering the classroom and mastering the things that you want to teach, and then you have true impact at the last stage of teaching. And one of the other big ideas that the reading had was it's okay to beg, borrow, and steal from other teachers. And any teacher knows that it's super important to not have to reinvent the wheel, that most of the time you can find things that have already been built. Okay, so for next month, the first days of school reading are pages 220 to 242. And I wanted to take some time to talk about the first days of school. This book is timeless. And I intentionally chunked out pages in the book across the school year. It wouldn't be realistic to expect new to profession teachers to read the entire book before the first day of school. So I had to make decisions on what pages were most relevant at different times in the year. My hope is that the book will be used as a resource until mentees have a good handle on their practice. It's impossible for new to the profession teachers to have the same experiential knowledge that you have. It takes practice and time to build that. And that's where you as a mentor come in. So all teachers, irrelevant of where they are in their career timeline, benefit from resources. So that's what the first days of school provides. It provides resources for any teacher. And I hope that you can extend that message to your mentees, that the first days of school reading, it's a good use of their time to read through the pages. The next Mentor Zoom will be February 2nd. Mark your calendars. And the last thing on the list is to get into your Google Drive and make sure you have the January Foursquares. There should be 3 of them. And
sorry, so February 2nd is Friday, is that right?
It shouldn't be. It's February 1st. Oh, that's a mistake. Thank you.
Okay.
That out. It's February 1st.
Okay, all right.
February 1st. And here is the January checklist. I just dropped the link into the chat box. And as soon as you have your January Foursquares, you have a look at the January checklist, then I bid you a good night. And thank you for catching that typo. Yeah, I had it written, I guess the PowerPoint is a typo.
Okay, that's okay. I just want to make sure I try my best to make it to everything I can. So, okay, thank you.
All right.
I appreciate it. I'll get back to you on the visit dates. Now, is that like that in-service time because you said we had like 3 days?
Yep.
Is that in addition to the 3 days?
We're doing pretty good. I try to be pretty flexible on the days.
Okay, because I know like I just emailed you about those.
I do.
And I was like,
yeah.
oh, whoops.
I know.
I want to make sure I save time.
I try to be really flexible about that. And, you know, we try to target as, you know, we try to budget a certain amount of time.
Sure.
And a certain amount of days, but we're doing pretty good this year. So
Okay.
don't worry about it. Like I said, there's lots of flexibility, and I don't want to limit your mentees' mentoring experiences. It's really, it's a hard balance. So
okay, yeah.
Some mentees want to go out and visit other classrooms and are really open to those opportunities, and some mentees are not. So, and so we haven't had a whole lot of mentees that have been out visiting classrooms. So I think when we think about the budget, I think we're doing fine. So I would rather your mentee have those experiences than not.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll plan for those, and then I'll work on getting this scheduled out too for each month. So yeah, perfect. Okay. Cool.
Right.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Good night. Happy New Year.
Yep. Same to you. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.